Awesome. Looks like we're on. And hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 18 or 17, sorry, of FemGineer Chats. And we have Sue-Ann Robertson on again for part two. So she was on last week for Easy Breezy Plastic Free. And today's episode is about taking action on that. And so excited to have you on again, Sue-Ann.
Thanks, Meryl. Sorry to be hogging the space.
No. I think everybody really enjoyed your chat last week. And we're really interested because there was sort of that bigger picture around, plastic in our lives and the implications kind of at a national level and at a cultural level. But now it's also a great time to address how do we take action as well, like as individuals, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Last week we spoke quite a bit about how plastic was such an issue in relation to sustainability and all the things that go with that. And I think, as you pointed out, we probably concluded that, plastic's pretty insidious and harmful, not only to the environment but ourselves. Uses resources that aren't really there to continue to be used. It's not a sustainable thing to do. So, obviously, as we mentioned last week, we need to take action now, not only as, government, industry, but also ourselves. And I think the takeaway really from last week was that less plastic needs to be produced. So industry has a big responsibility there, but it also, less plastic needs to be consumed, and that basically comes down to us.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, really this discussion is more around that single-use plastic, which is really more frequent in kind of an individual's life and the choices that we make in terms of food,
on the day-to-day.
in terms of, kind of day-to-day choices. And the household, the Australian household, is probably one of the largest generators of that single-use plastic. We definitely all have that choice. And you sort of mentioned this idea around the 7 R's of sustainability. So tell us more about that, because that's really interesting to me.
Yeah. I'll just jump over to where I was talking about that. So, the 7 R's of sustainability, some people say 6, I say 7 because I like to include composting in there, so rot.
Okay.
So basically we're talking about rethinking, refusing, reusing, reducing, repair, recycle and rot of plastics. A couple of those may not be strictly applicable when we're talking about plastic packaging, which is probably household plastic packaging. It's probably the focus of what we're talking about today. So I was going to explore those, but I guess I probably wanted to start with, before I did that, like I don't want to go necessarily into the things that we all know about, which is, the things that there's now bans on, well, for some items, depending on your state, plastic bags, straws, that sort of thing. And, even coffee cups and water bottles, we all know about reusing those. Though, obviously, the pandemic's had a bit of an impact on that. In that a lot, the hospitality industry has withdrawn in a lot of situations where we can reuse, which has been a bit unfortunate. So, and I think that was a bit unfortunate for our reuse psyche as well, because people were starting to develop good habits around those things, and then that was taken away. But I guess, that probably brings us back to looking at more what we're doing in the household. And one of the things I did mention last week was, or just very briefly, was doing a bin audit. So I don't know if anyone went home and sort of looked at what was there in their bin, but as I said last week, that really is the best way to start, because the level, depending how in depth you go with your bin audit, it does give you a lot of really good information. So to me, that's like, your real starting point at home is to look at what you're actually doing. Plastic Free July, if anyone really wants to get into the bin audit, gives they on their blog, they give a good description of, the steps of doing a successful bin audit. But I just wanted to talk about quickly a guy in the UK. He now has a project called Everyday Plastics. But he basically looked at everything that went into all the plastic that was he collected every bit of plastic that went into his bin over a year.
Yeah.
So he did like a bin audit gone crazy.
Yeah.
But what he found there was that what you would expect, 93% of
Yeah.
that plastic was single-use packaging. So what we were saying.
Sure.
Of that, most of that, 67% was used for food packaging.
Right.
In his situation, a lot of it, which I found interesting,
Oh,
everyone would find. I personally don't use any plastic wrap, but I thought that was quite a large number. So whether he
sorry. I
was
think
shopping and
you
getting
sort of
his fruit and vegetables.
paused in between a little bit. Could you kind of repeat that
So,
last sentence?
so 47% of the plastic he collected was plastic wrap,
Okay.
which I personally found quite high. But I
Yeah.
guess it depends whether he's shopping at supermarkets and the fruit and veg are wrapped in plastic wrap and all that sort of
Sure.
thing.
Sure.
So then of all of that plastic, 70% was not currently recyclable in the UK.
Wow.
And then
Okay.
of that 30% that was recyclable, only 10% would be actually collected, and only
Right.
4% of that would actually be recycled. So
Wow.
this is back in 2017. So of his 4,490 pieces of plastic that he collected over a year, only 161 pieces would be recycled.
So wow,
So
those are
this is from
huge
a bin.
numbers.
This is from a bin audit over a year,
Yeah.
admittedly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite significant what you can do with a bin audit.
Yeah.
So then getting
Huge.
back to that 7 R's of sustainability, I was going to take that from there in that the first thing to me for people to be doing at home is to actually rethink. So your first R, what you're doing with your bin system at home. And again, I touched on this a little bit last week with, it's really important to just get rid of a landfill bin and make yourself channel your rubbish into, connect with your rubbish and be putting it into your, I'll call it mainstream recycling, because you may be doing this at work or schools. So that won't be curbside recycling. So if we say mainstream recycling, and then compost, and then your soft plastic recycling. Soft plastic recycling is really important. And I don't know how many people use it, but most of that plastic packaging that's coming into your home or your workplace or your school will be from the food packaging, as we saw this Daniel did. So, and I think it's about 70 billion pieces. Australians produce about 70 billion pieces of soft
Wow.
plastic recycling per year, soft plastics, the scrunchy
Yeah.
plastics. So it's
Yeah. That we can
really
recycle.
important
Yeah.
to, one, try to avoid that type of packaging, but so rethink again what you're
Sure.
buying, what packaging
Yeah.
it's in. But two, if you are consuming that sort of plastic, it really needs to go into that soft plastic recycling. We know that plastic is actually recycled. We know that Replas makes furniture and bollards and
That's
all
right.
sorts of
Yeah.
stuff out of it.
Yeah.
So we know that's recycled, unlike your local government council
Yeah.
recycling, where we know not much of that is recycled at all.
It's recycled. Yeah.
That stuff is recycled, and that's a really key thing. I haven't got to that R yet, but that's a really key thing about recycling is to it takes a bit of research and extra work, but to try and source organisations, businesses that are actually recycling, that are
Yeah.
making something useful
Yeah.
out of that material. So, so with your next R, like to refuse, the trick is, now that you've got your bins set up properly, and this is going to take a bit of bedding down, obviously. If you're not in the habit of separating your waste that way, then obviously that's something that you need to get yourself and your family and everyone used to.
Yeah.
But the aim would be to refuse buying anything, a product and its packaging, so think of it as a whole, that when it is at the end of its life, only can go into those bins. If you're buying things that are
Right.
going into landfill, then obviously
And
we still have
if you're not having
that
that bin
issue.
anymore, then that shouldn't be part of your
So the idea of
buying
not
habit.
having that bin, obviously you'll still have your council landfill bin, but the idea is we're not putting anything in that bin. So we're composting it, we're recycling it, and we're trying to make sure it goes somewhere that, so it may not necessarily be recycling that goes to your curbside recycling. That recycling, elements of that recycling might go to TerraCycle if it's something a bit weird, like a pump pack or something like that, or it, it might go to someone else's that's going to make something out of it.
So TerraCycle, RedCycle programs that recycle those plastics.
That's right. Trying to find those sort of people. I know in Melbourne there's a place, I'm not sure what they collect, but I see them on social media. There's a place called Precious Plastic Melbourne. And I'm not sure if they're taking the bottle tops or the bread tags, but they're taking a variety of plastics. So it's, it's worth trying to find who's in your area that you might be able to take things to. So obviously, to refuse plastics is, in the ideal world, we'd all be growing our own veggies and making all our meals from scratch and, doing community neighbourhood shares and all that. Something I aspire to in my later life. But, reality is time and convenience and all the rest, which is how we got in this situation anyway, time and convenience. We're not necessarily able to do all those things, but, your next best options might be shopping at your farmers markets with your reusable tote bags and produce bags, or going to the bulk food stores with your jars and or other small local businesses, going to the bakery with your reusable bread bag, things like that. So all of those are great ways just to not even just bring plastic into your life anyway. I remember when I first started doing all that, and I'm a vegan now, but at the time I wasn't, and I started taking reusable containers to the deli or the butcher or whatever. And at first I was like, I felt really weird, about doing that. But people don't mind. I did not ever strike anyone.
It's a great idea.
But I mean, you end up carrying around a lot of gear, but it's beneficial in a way in that, yes, you're carrying around a lot of stuff, but basically you go home and you've already got everything in your containers and it just goes in your fridge or your pantry or whatever. There's none of this multi-handling and generation of rubbish, which is what we're talking about. So
absolutely. I think it's great because I know that some of the supermarkets as well are looking at bulk food stands as well, which is really good. But I guess this is an opportunity for us to start taking those steps, like the first one was rethink and then refuse, and start to do that now itself, where you're going out to farmers markets or bulk food stores, and then when it becomes easier and it's implemented at a supermarket level, it's much more convenient for you. Then it's just a really easy transition for you to just go to the supermarket rather than the store and have that planned out a day for shopping.
That's right. I love markets. That's me. Not everyone loves markets.
No, I'm the
but
same.
I love
I get
markets.
you.
Yeah. So that's my, that's what I look forward to on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
We go to the farmers market. We get some great breakfast, and then we know all the stall holders, and they know us, and we go around with our basket and our baggies, and we have a chat, and it's our morning out. We love it. But I guess the thing I like about it is it's very community focused. It supports local growers and makers and bakers and the economy. You don't need to walk into a supermarket for much at all, if anything. I tend to be a bulk food shopper as well. So I'm a big believer in supporting local businesses. And I think that in itself is a great way to avoid plastic, because you develop those relationships and, people, I don't know, you're going to places and shopping from people that are like-minded.
Absolutely.
That's what so it just makes it becomes like going to the supermarket, becomes just a routine, and it just makes it so much easier to avoid all plastic. So,
and
but again, it's a transition.
It is absolutely. And it just occurred to me, as you said, you're a vegan. Like I understand that, and there are some people who might want to buy, say, eggs, for example. At meat, in the case of meat, it's easy, get a container. You ask the butcher to put it in there. With eggs, it might be a bit more tricky, but it's always, I think this is an opportunity to learn and ask those questions. Can I bring back my old egg container or whatever it is? Or
Yeah.
can I bring, because they also sell reusable egg containers or whatever it may be, but ask those questions and see where you can avoid that packaging. Because I was thinking about the same issue around strawberries, which are hard to have in bulk and then, collect them in because they're so soft or whatever. How do you navigate that issue? But as an individual level, whatever your dietary requirements need, find out and ask those questions and have those conversations.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And, most people have probably done a lot of that already. Most people have their preferred places to shop. And if you're going there every week, you may know a lot of people already that you shop from. So it's easier to explore what your options are. And I guess for me, it's at the market. Like I can take, because I get eggs. I do my shopping for my mum and I get her eggs, and, I get her carton from her every time. And, the lady just fills it up and I take it, so,
awesome.
Sometimes it's trial and error. It's not always easy or obvious to find a solution. But I just think it's about doing the best you can and making sure you're not trying to change everything at once. It's one thing at a time, because usually in making a change of how you're choosing to shop or how you're choosing to store your food or whatever it might be, it means a change in habit. It's a change in behavior. So all those things,
absolutely.
And if you've got a family, or if you're trying to do this at school or in the workplace, you've got all these other people as well that you've got to try and influence to do these things. So it's just something that you do slowly. So
for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So I guess part of that as well with reducing. I'm sorry, I'm just a bit lost as what I was sort of talking about.
Sorry, I did cut you off as well.
No, that's all right. I guess probably what I've just said, any reducing, it's a bit, when you're refusing plastic, you're reducing as well. It always, they're all very linked. It keeps coming back to rethinking as well. So it's really thinking about, when you do your bin audit and you see like, oh my God, I'm eating so many, or not that, that's going to start going into diet. There's a product that you're consuming so much of and it's creating all this plastic waste. It's like, well, I guess it's about going through a process of questioning about, is it something that you really do need? And if you do need it, what we've touched on, is there a better option as either the product or the packaging? Is there some that comes in a compostable 100% recycled paper or something like that, or in a packaging that you could actually reuse? Can I find it in a glass jar, or does the bulk food store have something similar that I can go and refill? Or as you mentioned, can you buy it in bulk? Can you make it yourself if you've got time? Or can the neighbor make it for you, and can you swap? Just things like that. It's really about thinking, just really thinking about what your relationship is with that product, I guess, and the necessity of it to you, and how you can maybe put it in a different framework so that it's more environmentally friendly and creates less waste. So I think we've probably touched on most, even for reducing, most of the things. My main tip around that I would think about is keeping how you food that you bring in, how it comes in the most probably natural, if you can, type packaging. And again, how you store your food. So, I'm talking things, preferably you're talking things like, and sustainable materials. So not only your natural fibres and textiles, but your sustainable materials. So, anything that's, I'm thinking about things like beeswax wraps and fabric produce bags and metal, stainless steel lunch boxes and
Sure.
glass storage containers, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
jars, etc. Jars, I love jars. Always have a jar.
Yeah.
You can drink out of a jar
many.
if you have to. That's right. I am the jar lady. So just things like that. Just because obviously all those things are glass jars, for example, they're ultimately reusable, infinitely reusable and recyclable. So much better material to be using. I mean, obviously they break, but you've got to be careful. So I guess that leads us into basically reusing everything that you can, and getting creative with that. When it comes to, obviously, a plastic packet is really hard to reuse. So you're wanting to refuse it and, reduce it in the first place. But, there are things like Ziploc bags. You can reuse those. You can, if you've got a stash of Ziploc bags, that you need to use up before you maybe think about going to something else, and fabric food pouches or silicone pouches, whatever it may be, that you decide would be good for your household. You can just wash and reuse those things till they die.
Sure, absolutely.
Throwing them out without using them is creating more waste, obviously. So things like that. Thick plastic bags that you may have collected over the years and from shopping, keep using them until they die. Great for storage. Pump backs are great at the bulk food store if you decide that you're going to convert to a refillable shampoo and conditioner or something like that. Keep your pump packs because, usually you can reuse those for years. I don't need to mention the glass jars again because we've mentioned those a few times.
You do love your jars.
Things like, people often talk about, think that to start doing all this, you've got to buy all this new stuff. You don't have to buy all this new stuff. No. You can make, I love my glass jars and I love calico bags. So, all of us have been in the workplace where we've gone to conferences and you get calico bags at the conferences or, I don't know. I personally have a huge collection of calico bags that I have not bought. They're great bread bags. They're great produce bags. You can reuse all those things. You can make, if you're handy, make things out of tea towels and pillowcases and all that stuff. You don't have to buy new things.
No, I agree.
Tell me if I'm talking about all this stuff too much. So then...
No, it's perfect.
Recycling. I've talked about how recycling is really not ideal, and it's really the last resort. When you've exhausted being able to, everything else, then you'd look at recycling. And as I said, try and, your soft plastic recycling is an absolute. But with your other recycling, just as we talked about, trying to find those places that will actually recycle the items. Curbside recycling is really just a road to landfill. So it's not working out. Your bottles and tins, obviously, it's called for containers for change up in Queensland, but, where you can take them in and get your 10 cents or whatever it is. And TerraCycle is great. Plus those local recycling places. The other thing, I'm just watching the time, but the other thing I just wanted to talk about quickly is repair. Not most of us, repair doesn't really work with these sort of plastics, but, if you can repair something and reuse it, go for your life because it's better than just thoughtlessly throwing it away. I wanted to touch on compostable plastics. Basically because they're all a little bit deceiving. A lot of your bioplastics is a broad term, and a lot of them are still made from petrochemicals with either a metal or an industrial chemical added to them to make them break down. They're an issue because even though they break down more quickly than conventional plastics, microplastics are a big issue with these because they just break down into smaller pieces and that just fly off into the environment. And they still emit. So plastics are awful off gases as they break down. So they still emit. If you are sure that something is 100% plant-based, so made from a corn or a sugarcane or one of the other starches, then that is a true bioplastic, and it is, compostable. But again, at home, they don't necessarily compost well at home. They take a very long time. It's not really efficient. So ideally they should go to industrial composting. And again, that's research and a bit of work to find where you might be able to send those things. They do break down into natural substances, but I would think a lot of those, if you're shopping at the supermarket, you're buying something in compostable plastic, I would think a lot of that's ending up in landfill. And once it's in landfill, it's like any other plant-based material. There's no oxygen in there, so it will create methane. So it will emit greenhouse gases. So it's not really achieving anything for us. It can't be put in soft plastic recycling because the material breaks down, so it can't be used. So, I guess the take-home message for compostable plastics is they're probably, to me, they're best avoided unless you can get them off to industrial composting. I don't know about Victoria, but I think councils are probably looking at, I know we did a survey recently with our council about looking at whether food waste and compostable plastics and things like that can be put in our green bins. Because at this stage, all we can put in our green bins is our garden waste. So obviously that material goes to an industrial composting. So in that situation, if you have that system, then you can compost those plastics. But at the moment, no.
At the moment, no. Yeah. So no, look, I think that's really good. And I mean, when you kind of summarize these 7 R's together, ultimately the goal here is to reduce virgin materials as much as you can. And in this case, we're talking about single-use plastics. But I think it's obviously a lot of information. You're very knowledgeable about this space. And so people might find that overwhelming. But I think following the steps is really good. Start with rethink, then refuse, reuse, reduce, repair, recycle, and then finally the rot idea. And so, I think if they start with those ideas progressively, then it makes it a lot more digestible. And oh no, we've lost Sue-Ann. What's happened? Sorry, guys. Seem to have lost her. Hold on, let me see if she can get back in there. Oh, well, I don't know if we've lost her for good. I'm sorry, apologies. If this is how we have to end it, just with me. But I think, Sue-Ann has gotten through most. Okay, wait, we've got her back.
Oh.
Well, you're back. Great.
I'm back.
I'm glad I don't have to finish that on my own. I was just talking through, the steps. You've got your 7 steps, and obviously there's a lot of information here, and it can be overwhelming for people. But when we follow the steps, I think that's a really great way. And that first step is a huge one, just by rethinking and taking away your curbside rubbish bin for one. Is the perfect starting point. And then, you kind of, as you go along through the next steps, you'll pick up information along the way and talk to more people, and then learn about, your network in your area where you can reduce and where you can dispose of things effectively and stuff. So I really think that it's really great to follow these steps. And because there's a lot of information you've given us today, Sue-Ann. So it's been really good.
I'm always in for the overkill.
No, that's better than
it's
not.
A good framework. I think it's a good framework. And even if, as you say, if people just start with really just looking at what's in their bins and just rethinking one item at a time,
For sure.
And as you get into the swing of it, so finding the problem item, finding the stuff that's creating the most waste for you, and just working through that framework. And as you get into the swing of it with each item, it will naturally sort of cascade, and you'll be all over it. So
yeah, absolutely. Oh no, it's very good. I think that's great. And if you have any resources to share, please feel free to. That would be good, or even just information that you have to share. That would be good.
As I said, I might. I do have a blog on my website, so I'll try to. It probably won't be this week, but next week I'll try to pop some material around the couple of sessions up on there.
Yeah, definitely do so. And so, no, it's been really good to have you on. And just a reminder, so Sue-Ann is from Green Dandelion. I will link in her website in the comments, so anybody can get in touch with her if they need to. Did you want to give your email out, Sue-Ann? Is that another good way to get in touch? Or just the best with their website?
Yeah, that's fine.
Your website? Okay, wonderful.
Website or email is fine. Yeah.
Okay. Is your email on there? It's on the contact page.
I don't know. Actually, there is a contact form, but
sure.
Yeah.
Maybe just tell everybody.
I'm happy for you to pop it in the comments, like you did last time with my website.
Yeah, perfect. Oh, that's great. Well, that's very good. Well, it's been really good to have you on, and super informative, and it's been really enjoyable. I think really useful for me as well to pick up some of those tips on what I can do. So thank you everyone for joining who stayed on the live, and if you wanted to catch the replay, so catch it on the YouTube channel. I'll link that as well in the comments, and have a good rest of your day or evening, and talk to you all soon. Bye.
Bye.